Okay, here we go. Right, as it seems to be tradition at the moment, we're having an amusing conversation. We'd like to invite you in. We'd like to invite you into our amusing conversation. So welcome to the welcome to this part of this edition of the podcast. So today,
Hey, people.
yeah, okay, hello there. Right, so now I have to say, I don't like talking about politics. Right, I don't. This isn't supposed to be about politics, but the problem is that everything that is going on at the moment is about politics, and it is so we've got to talk about it. I mean, I'm desperate to talk about something else, right? I'm desperate to talk about something else, but we can't not talk about this. So, obviously, this week, a few things happened. And Trump was at the center of it all, and we're going to talk about two things today. One is, why did Trump change course? So he started off the week being very, very kind of aggressive about the whole the tariff thing. We're going to stick with it. It's going to be great. We're going to make America great and all that. And then everyone just went, what? I mean, I was going to say a phrase, everyone somethinged the bed, but I can't say that on podcast. But the whole thing happened, everyone panicked, and things, markets went crazy. And then he said, actually, don't worry, I'll give you a 90-day stay of execution. And things calmed down. I mean, one day, I think it was on one of the American markets had the best day since 2001, something like that, on a 1 day bounce. So we're going to talk about why did Trump change from being very much right. We're going to stick with this to actually we're not really going to stick with this. We're going to sort of stick with it very slightly. But we're reeling things in. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Second thing we're going to talk about is this is going to sound strange, but is he building an alternate universe? And you'll see what I mean when we talk about this. But anyway, let's start off with, why did Trump change course?
Oh, this is me talking now, is it? I thought you were presenting your theory, but no.
No.
I have to talk about things which I don't understand. I don't think anybody really quite understands why Trump does anything in any particular given moment in time. But I think in this particular case, well, when I saw this, I had this sort of metaphor image playing around in my mind, which was an unruly child who wanted to have a particular toy, and the parents of the child saying, well, you can't have that, Donald. You can't have tariffs on everybody. And Donald was jumping up and down and saying, no, I absolutely want my tariffs. And the parents were saying,
it's a beautiful word.
Okay, then fine. You can have some tariffs, but not all of them. You can have 10% on everybody and China, but that's it. And Donald was jumping up and down. He couldn't actually do much about it because his parents were the bond markets. Okay, now I'm not making sense. Everybody is starting to assume that I'm as mad as Don, but I'm going to explain what I mean by this. Now, clearly, tariffs are very close to Mr. Trump's heart. We know this because he said that tariffs, the word tariff is the nicest word in the English language, just after love and some other word which I now forgot. And
I tariff you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were kind of proposed, were they?
Yeah.
I propose a tariff.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah. Anyway, and we know this is very central to his way of thinking. If thinking is indeed the word which I need to use to describe the intellectual dynamics going on behind the man's head, but they are clearly close to his. The policies which he wishes to implement. They're close to they're a key to his idea of America first. He believes that tariffs will not only act in a protectionist way, they also represent cash which other countries pay to America. This is wrong, as we pointed out. But if you understand that that is what Donald Trump thinks tariffs are, then it becomes a little bit more understandable why he is so keen to impose tariffs on other countries. Now, it therefore needs to take a lot for him to change tack on it, not just because he believes, and I believe genuinely believes, that tariffs are good for the US economy, but also and importantly because his personality, he's invested some of his personality in this. And we know that Donald Trump doesn't want to back down, doesn't like to be seen weak in public. And so some of the retrenchment here will be seen by him as backing down. That's another reason why it wouldn't have been easy for him to actually repeal or step back from these tariffs. And yet he did. And did it take years? No, it didn't. It took like 3 days or so before he retrenched. And now what is happening is there is a 90-day pause to most of the tariffs. The 10% minimum tariff is still in place, and China is exempted from the stay of execution, if that makes sense. So there are still tariffs on China. And I said earlier, because it's the bond markets which made him cave in. Because if we remember what happened is, at first, what happened is that people were selling stocks, the equity markets were weakening very materially, simply because people were, of course, expecting all the various economic pieces of fallout that were about to hit the US economy. We don't have to repeat them. We know what they are: inflation, dollar weakening, etc. And what happened at first is that some of the funds were leaving the equity markets and were rotated into assets seen as safe havens. One of these assets is always gold, and gold went up in price. Cryptocurrency was not amongst those to be seen as safe haven assets at the moment, this time round, so crypto also cratered. But the other asset class, which was temporarily seen as a safe haven, were bonds. And very briefly, the 10-year in the US and the 10-year around the world increased in value and yields dropped. When I say 10-year, this is again a bit of jargon. It just relates to the term of these bonds. There are all durations, all terms pretty much available, and the most liquid one is the bond which has a 10-year term. This is why I'm not a bond market expert, of course, by any means. I used to be an equity analyst, not a bond market analyst, but that is what people say. So the 10-year went up in price and the yields went down briefly. But then the opposite happened, because we know that the 10-year completely cratered. People were selling out of US debt. That's what people were doing. And why were they doing this? Interestingly, this goes back to something which we discussed just 2 or 3 episodes ago, where we were talking about the possibility, unpalatable and perhaps improbable though it may have sounded, that the US may become uninvestable. That investors might see the US as imbued with too much political risk of a genuinely unpredictable nature, than to form an arena in which they were happy to put money, in which they were happy that they were able to forecast within some measurability of doubt or uncertainty the returns which they would make from that investment. And this is basically what happened, however. I wouldn't say necessarily that the bond markets have proven us right, and I don't want to be right on this, but certainly there was a moment, and there is an ongoing moment that people are losing faith in the investability of the US markets in general. And when that happens, then people sell the debt of a country. They sell the bonds. And this is what happened very clearly. Yields shot up. This is another jargon thing. When you sell the bond, the price of the bond falls. That's obvious. And the quid pro quo is that the yields increase. You hear this all the time when people talk about the bond markets. They're saying something like, "Oh, bonds were cratering, the yields shot up." And you might be wondering, is this not the opposite? It's just a technical thing. The price comes down, and when that happens, it's like a seesaw, then the yield goes up. So this happened in this case. The 10-year was sold off, the yields shot up, and that means that the ability of a country to roll over its existing national debt and to refinance, so to speak, to issue new debt has increased. That is the key to understand. At a time when debt is sky high in pretty much all industrialized economies, not just the US, it is poison to the economy when the yields on existing debt rise, and therefore new debt will have to be offered at more attractive yields, therefore becomes more expensive. And I think that is the reason why Trump caved in, because some people must have been able to explain to him that that is a bad thing, and that he will look really silly as a president presiding over a situation where the national debt is becoming unaffordable, a situation which would directly assail his credibility as a leader of the economy. In that context, maybe amusingly, James Carville, who was a political advisor, I believe, to the Clinton administration, quipped that if reincarnation existed, he wants to be reincarnated as the bond markets.
That's like a pretty geeky thing to say.
It's a totally geeky thing to say. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like
rock
it's
star,
like
no. A film star, no. Bond market, yes.
Yeah, the bond markets, baby.
No.
It's a super geeky thing to say. It's like it's an economist's joke. Only economists would understand it, which is why probably he got very few laughs for that one.
Yeah.
But what he meant by this is, however, that everybody defers to the bond markets. It's the bond markets which hold the highest power. And that is what happened here. Basically, an economist's joke is it's like a mathematician's joke, isn't it? They're even worse. It's like what's the oddest prime? It's 2 because it's even. Ha 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 ha! I leave you to work out why that is funny. But isn't that terrible?
Oh my god!
It's just the worst thing
I've
ever heard. Anyway, let's go back to the subject.
Okay, actually, let's not look. Let's. Have I ever told you the joke that I made up myself?
Oh God, do I need to hear this?
So,
go on.
What is the happiest accountancy firm in Ireland?
Please, I wouldn't know.
Deloitte.
Oh.
See, I made that up. I made that up myself. So,
you're a very funny man. This is very clear.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Deloitte.
Anyway, let me go back to James Carville. So he wanted to be reincarnated as the bond markets because the bond market, everybody kowtows to the bond markets, etc., blah blah, and we understand this now. I think this is what happened here. So why did President Trump cave in? Because the bond markets told him so, and what is there for the future going to be? We hear that this is only a stay of execution. We hear this is only 90 days. But let us not go there now. Let us just take a look at what is still in place. There is still a tariff of 10% now in place on everybody. And for example, the EU had an average tariff of 2%, so this is 5 times that. And the typical tariff is something like 5%, so this is double. So this is still a very substantial increase over the tariffs that used to exist. Yes, it may be looking better against a completely cataclysmic benchmark which he himself invented or imposed, but it is certainly not better relative to where we were before Trump mania took hold.
Mm.
And of course, China, which is the second largest economy in the world by GDP. The US is the largest, but it is the largest producer of consumer goods in the world. Now, these guys, and I don't actually know what it is now. I need to look this up because this is a moving target. I think it's now something like 145% or something tariff on China.
Mm.
So percentages which are larger than 100% always confuse me. That means it's a multiple of 2.5 times. Something that costs 100 quid now costs 250. This is an enormous tariff. Basically, when you put a tariff of that order of magnitude on goods, it holds trade. It just basically means that there is no trade with China anymore going on. And that is going to hurt the US economy very materially, in particular because China is not backing down. They're taking up the gauntlet here, and they have retaliated with tariffs which are now, as of I think a few hours ago, of equal or similar magnitude. So yes, this is going to hurt China, of course, but it is also again hitting America over and above the impact which we've already seen. So we will have to see what is going to happen next. Is Trump going to repeal these targets altogether and scrap them? I think eventually something like this might happen. But if I'm honest, I believe that the floor, the 10% floor, that's probably here to stay. And we're not going to go below that anytime soon unless countries as powerful as the single market, it's not a country, but entities as powerful as the single market, the European Union, will be able to broker a deal and perhaps lower the tariffs back to, or lower the tariffs for the first time to a mutual zero, which I think might even be possible because Trump will understand that he can use that as an off-ramp, as the Americans say, and basically sell that then to his own people as a win. Because then he could say, well, I told you so, this was a grand plan from day one. All I wanted is for people to come to the table, and here we are, I've achieved it. Which is going to happen if we have negotiations of this type in the future. This is going to be the reaction of Trump. I will bet money on it. But let's remember, there was never a grand plan. There was only ever chaos.
Yeah, interesting. I know that is interesting stuff. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably a very stupid question, but is it possible for someone to, or a government, or let's say a president, to forbid the selling of bonds? Like, for instance, the markets, some markets, you can actually the regulators have said that you're not allowed to short stocks, for instance, and they've suspended the shorting of stocks to stop, getting short sellers attacking something.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think? I mean, is it theoretically possible that he could, become more powerful than the bond market by somehow putting something in which would stop investors from selling bonds?
Well, this is a very interesting question.
Oh, thank you very much.
I said interesting. I didn't
Oh, no,
say it
okay.
wasn't stupid.
Okay, no, fair enough then. Yeah. No, don't worry, we'll go revert to type now. So
No, joking aside, I never thought about this. To be honest with you,
Mm.
I'm thinking about it now because I do find it very interesting. First off, would America ever think about invading Canada? Of course not. Oh, they said it.
Mm.
Greenland? Oh, they said it. So my point here is that, as I said before, nothing is inconceivable anymore.
Mm.
Everything is kind of on the table. Everything you can think of is on the table.
Mm.
So from that point of view, I don't know whether that can be done. You are right. It is, of course, possible for private entities, fund managers, etc., to close a fund against demand. And if everybody wants to withdraw their money from a fund at the same time, then the fund will not be able to sell the investments quickly enough, and then the fund is suspended for either temporarily or forever. If it is particularly bad, then the company is going to go bankrupt, as we've seen in the Woodford funds. So that is, of course, possible. These are private entities. Next step up, when you're talking about state actors and nations, I don't know. We have to think about this. But what is definitely, of course, possible for nation states to do is they can invoke capital controls. And that is definitely possible. A capital control is basically something where the government says that it is no longer allowed to sell certain type of assets, to allow the outflow of capital from the market. Dictatorships do this all the time. The reason that the ruble, I mean, that went up and down like a yo-yo as well. If you remember, after the invasion in Ukraine, yes, the trading in the ruble was halted. There was no trade anymore in the ruble at all. And yet the ruble still managed to weaken and then strengthen. How is that possible? Because of capital controls, which Russia invoked. And we're not going to go into too much detail here, but basically dictatorships do this all the time. They restrict the flow of capital in and out of the country. And that is, of course, something which Donald Trump could do. In fact, I was wondering whether that might be the next step or one of the next steps. So to your point, I don't know whether it is theoretically possible or legally possible to make trading in bonds illegal, but it is certainly possible, I believe, I need to fact check this, to bar the outflow of capital out of the country. In terms of overnight money, hot money, if interest rates go down in the US or go up, let's say go up is easy to understand. If they go up in the US, immediately you get this sort of so-called hot money, which is sloshing around the world to go into the US to take advantage of these high interest rates, and that is that the dollar then typically appreciates until it holds that particular flow. It's this type of flow of capital into and out of the country which can be regulated or impacted by capital controls. And so, yeah, absolutely. I believe something like that is possible, and I wouldn't put it past him at all to institute something like
Absolute shocker. It's an absolute shocker, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't know, just thought, why wouldn't he? You know, he's telling me anyway. So we've only got 5 minutes now, but just to say, move on to the next thing, which kind of, was a bit to do with all this. So I have been thinking, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but which is what every conspiracy theorist says.
Yeah.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it just seems to me Trump appears to be building an alternate almost like an alternate universe at the moment, because you you know so
Mhm.
the thing that got me thinking about this most was he sent out a tweet, I don't know, it was a week ago or a few days ago, and things are all bad, the stock market, etc., all bad, and then he sent out a tweet saying in his characteristics, all caps, this is a great time to buy. Now, you and I talked about this before we we pressed hit record,
Hmm.
and the thing is, we are probably more sensitive than most people about advice because of what we used to do and what constitutes advice. Because when we used to be regulated, you had to be very, very conscious of saying, by the way, this is not advice, this is just opinion.
Hmm.
And you weren't allowed to write things like, or you might have been able to, but I wasn't allowed to write something like, I would buy this or I would sell that, or weren't allowed to say it. Although everyone knows that that's kind of your job. But when he said great time to buy, I immediately thought,
Yeah,
put my
me
teeth
too.
on edge and thinking, I don't know, that sounds like front running to me.
Mm.
Because he knows, he makes all the rules. He has put he's suppressed the media, the legal profession, the judiciary, um, and actually academia as well is
Yeah,
another
yes,
one.
yes.
And so basically so many institutions that would normally hold someone to account. But and not only that, he's then the other thing as well is crypto, where he has, so I think it was SEC Gary Gensler, he was very against crypto. He's now got someone at the head who is very pro crypto, and he has his own, he has this stable coin USD1. He's got his meme coin, his Trump coin. It just feels to me like he's building. Is he building an alternate sort of financial universe whereby if things go wrong in the conventional sense, he can say to everyone, "Hey, everyone, buy my USD1, and we'll get rich together." And everyone goes, they all buy this, and he says, "Okay, everyone, better sell it now." Or obviously, he makes sure that he sells 30 seconds before everyone else does, and then it all goes down again. Um, can he? It almost feels like he's building this as like maybe a safety net of some kind. But anyway, I mean, it does sound ridiculous. But the thing is, you just don't know. You just don't know here.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what do you think about that then?
Well, well, yes. I mean, maybe. I don't know. What I can say is that, and I've said this before. I think we are. Just to put this into a wider framework, I know we are almost at the end of this chat, and this would actually warrant to have a special on this. But what I will say is, and I have said before, I believe that we are witnessing an object lesson of how to subvert an exemplary democracy from within.
Mm.
Let us not forget one thing. All through the first 3 months of this administration, there were executive orders flying left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
I have myself made the mistake of not asking myself, what is this actually?
Mm.
Why is this possible? No other president has actually done this. Other presidents have instituted acts through parliament. He doesn't do this. He rules by executive order.
Mm.
This is only possible for a president who has invoked a state of emergency. And there is an act for this in America which gives you the legal basis to do this. I forgot what the act is called, but he is basically standing on the basis of that act. He has invoked national emergency on flimsy grounds, and that is the reason why he is now capable, he's able legally to rule by executive order. The fact that he is ruling by executive order is also the reason why all this is happening so quickly. I mean, he has hit the ground running, prepared by Project 25, but he keeps it coming thick and fast, executive order after executive order. That's the reason why this is happening so fast. All of these tariffs were instituted by executive order. That doesn't normally happen. Normally, you need an act passed by Congress, and that takes a long time. Now, Donald Trump doesn't want this to take a long time, of course, and he has found the device, the instrument of an executive order to implement all these things more quickly. But what does that actually mean? It means that he is already acting like a dictator, like a king, like a monarch, like an autocrat, a central lawmaker who has few checks and balances acting on him. And this is basically to your point. He is already holding checks and balances in abeyance, which exist in the US democracy. Parliament, which is Congress in the US, has the power to repeal that particular invocation of national emergency if they rule in favor of such a repeal. And they haven't done this yet. The Democrats have made a motion. The Republicans have used a flimsy excuse not to rule on this motion, and that is why the situation is perpetuated. So, yes, I mean, and I could go on, but I won't. When you say that is basically institutions are being that exist in the US are not holding him to authority here. Well, it's not just small institutions; it's Parliament who doesn't do that. And so, yes, to your point, I believe that he is definitely trying to and succeeding so far in subverting a democracy into something that gives him a key role as a decision maker on whom checks and balances are no longer acting to the extent that they used to, or I think that's the end game, are going to be completely abolished. And of course, such a person will be able to also build a space, a financial space, in which he can perhaps enrich himself and do whatever he wants. My final comment, because we're running out of time, I think is that I wonder whether Donald Trump does things now for the purpose of personal enrichment. It is possible. I doubt it, to be honest. I think that he has other plans, that his personality urges him to implement himself as an autocratic leader in the United States. He has already recently denied that he's interested in the third term. You know what people are saying when they deny something. And again, we have discussed it before. People have discussed it before. They're saying it's very unlikely that he is going to be able to do this. Unlikely it may be, but it is already under discussion. He's already said he's not interested in it, which clearly shows that he has thought about it. And so I think that the financial space, which you were alluding to, is just one aspect of a grander plan. And I do believe that we are seeing, and I'm going to repeat this phrase now, an object lesson in how to subvert a democracy from within. That is, I think, what Donald Trump is doing.
Okay. Well, there we go. On that cheery note,
I can never travel to the United States again.
I know. Well, yeah. But anyway, yeah. On that cheery note, we shall leave you. And hopefully, I want to talk about something else. I really do. I want to talk about something else. Maybe who knows? Maybe next week something good will happen. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. Have a great. Thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you very much for everyone for listening, for watching, etc. And we'll be back again next week. Hopefully, not to talk about tariffs.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thanks, guys, for having me as always. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.